5 muscle building exercises you're probably doing wrong and how to fix them. What's up guys, Matt Dashu here from Blue Star Nutraceuticals, and today I'm gonna go over 5 muscle building exercises that you're probably doing wrong and how to fix them. I'm gonna give you guys the most important pointers that I wish someone would have taught me back when I first got started. Some of these actually, unfortunately, embarrassingly, took me years to learn, but they're gonna be some of the most critical components to you guys dialing in these muscle building exercises, all right? So let's head over to the squat rack and get started. All right, guys, so first we're gonna talk about squats. Now, one of the most common mistakes I see happening when people squat is that they dump really far forward as they're doing their squat. They get right up onto their toe and they put a crazy amount of stress on their lower back. I'm gonna demonstrate what it looks like first, and then I'm gonna show you a couple key pointers to help improve this so that it doesn't happen to you and that you can look much cooler when you're squatting. All right, I think that's about as bad as it gets. So you might have noticed there, my knees caved in. I tipped way too far forward. I did about a quarter of a squat. I was driving the bar forward onto my shoulders. My head was cranked out of position. I didn't breathe properly. Now, let's fix this. Let's talk about the solution from the ground up. First and foremost, if you do not have enough ankle, you will not be able to squat properly. The name of the game here is balance. And if the knee can't translate forward, that means I'm not gonna be able to stay upright. I'm gonna have to tip my upper body forward this way. And that's gonna put a ton of shearing force on the spine. So I want to avoid that as much as possible. If you have enough ankle mobility, the knee can translate forward. It allows you to stay more upright. If the knee can't come forward, you have no choice but to stick that butt out and tip forward this way. Now, next thing we want to correct is that knee collapse. One of the things I like to think of always with lifting is optimal joint alignment. So I'm always gonna want my knees in alignment over top of my ankles. If the knee is buckling in this way, I'm not gonna have a lot of force transfer capacity. And if something gives, it's gonna give in that way and I could blow something important. So I wanna try to avoid that. Next mistake, initiating the rep then by tipping forward. I want my bar path to be as straight as possible. So what I wanna do is think about keeping my neutral spine, driving the hips back without arching the back, and just a slight weight transfer, keeping the bar in a nice straight line. As soon as there's a split second there where it feels like I'm transferring my weight onto my heels, then I'm just gonna sit down like I would if I was sitting down on the couch or sitting down on the john. Last couple things I'll say is that the other thing I was doing was I had my elbows up super high and I was driving the bar into the back. And one of the main fixes to this is just to open up these chest muscles. So before I got started here, I was doing some stretches for my pec minor. What I like to do is a little technique, I just call it a contract relax to keep it simple. Once I go into the stretch, I'm gonna push into the bar for about 5-6 seconds. Take a big deep breath. As I exhale, I can go further into the stretch. I'll do that 2 or 3 times as prep before I squat. So if you get all those points down from the ground up, again, nice straight bar path, my knees can translate forward. I'm driving the knees over the ankles. I've got lots of tension in my upper back and I'm not driving the bar into the back of my neck. I can just keep my spine neutral throughout the entire movement. Quick recap, ankle mobility, knees over the ankles, drive the hips back to start the movement, and make sure you got lots of mobility in the chest there so you're not driving the bar forward as you go down into your squat. There you have it, perfect squat. All right guys, so muscle building exercise 2 that you're probably doing wrong is gonna be the bench press, okay? So this is one of the overall probably easiest exercises to do wrong next to the squats, and something that I see people doing messed up on a regular basis, and you can really do a lot of damage to yourself here if you're not doing this right. So same format here guys, I'm gonna do a rep as bad as possible to show you all the things you don't wanna be doing. Watch closely. Okay, so I've got my lower back arched to the point I'm about to herniate a disc. I got my elbows flaring way out and they're uneven. My wrists aren't in alignment. With the bar, and I'm not breathing properly. And I didn't have my shoulders packed. None of that there. So that was pretty much almost all the mistakes I can make in one fell swoop. I think that was about as wrong as I can make it, all right? Basically, I was a mess, okay? So what I wanna do is organize myself in my starting position. I don't wanna hyperextend the lower back, right? So I'm not gonna do this big crazy bridge. Frankly, I don't have the mobility to do it and it's not necessary. Next thing I wanna do, make sure that When I unrack the bar, I'm already in a set position with my shoulder. When I'm unracking, before I do my first rep, what I want to do is think about driving my shoulders down towards my hips to turn my lats on. Those lats are going to tie into these arm bones here, and they're going to act like a guy wire. They're going to prevent the arms from flailing around like wet noodles all over the place. As I'm doing the rep, I want to think about pulling the bar down towards my chest. So I'm going to engage those back muscles, and I want to make sure that my elbows don't flare out too far away from my body. So I usually aim for about a 45 to a 60-degree angle here. I want to inhale on the way down, exhale on the way up, and it's important that I get a nice full range of motion. So I want the bar to touch my chest, and at the top, I want to lock the elbows out, but I don't want to push the bar away from my body. I'm going to unrack. I'm going to set my shoulders, so I'm going to drive the shoulders down towards the hips. I'm going to pull the bar down towards my chest, engaging all of my back muscles. You'll see that my elbows are not flaring out. Now they're in proper alignment with my wrists. And then when I drive up, my elbows will stay in alignment and they won't flare out. At the top of the movement, I'm going to do my lockout here, but I'm not trying to push the bar away from me as far as possible. I'm going to inhale on the way down, exhale on the way up. If I'm doing a very heavy rep, I can inhale and hold. And then exhale as I get over the hardest part of the rep. All the mistakes, all the solutions. And if you do this right, you're gonna build some massive muscle. If you do it wrong, good chance you're gonna hurt yourself, and an injured athlete can't get bigger or stronger. All right, so we're doing pull-ups next, and you need to be able to see what my shoulder blades are doing for this one. And I didn't shave my back for nothing, so shirt's coming off for this one. All right, guys, pull-ups are the next muscle building exercise that people butcher all the time. Most people do it wrong. I'm gonna show you how to do it right, but first, I'm gonna just massacre this for you. I'm gonna try to make this as ugly as possible. I don't know if you caught the magic there, but that was about as horrible as I could make it. I was not engaging my scapula. I was basically doing all the movement with my biceps and my legs. At the top, I was letting the shoulders roll forward, which is not very good. And basically, it just looked horrible. It didn't look cool. All right, guys, so now that we've butchered this, we're gonna clean this up, okay? So essentially, there's a couple key points here. So when we're starting the movement, it's important that we get the scapula to engage. Pulling the scaps down as I pull my body up towards the bar. I also want to think about making sure that I'm not using a ton of momentum from my lower body, so I don't want to be swinging my legs. One of the things I like to do is actually point the toes and then do a little bit of a hollow body. So I'm actually going to drive my legs forward a little bit so that I don't arch my lower back excessively. And then the other thing I want to think about, this is a vertical pull. So as I'm going through the motion, I'm trying to keep my wrist fairly in line with my elbow. If I get to the top and I start pulling my elbow behind me, what you'll see happen is that my shoulder starts dumping forward like that. And that's just not a great position for your shoulder joint to be in repeatedly in this type of movement. There are guys who do that obviously for do muscle ups in different exercise, and there's a different bunch of muscles that need to be built and established in order to do that properly. But for what we're doing here, in terms of building muscle mass in the lats, all right guys, so let's have a look at this move front. Here, again, full range of motion. The muscle that stretches the most is typically the muscle that's going to grow the most. There you have it, guys. Pull-ups, one of the best muscle building exercises for the lats. Make sure you take away the momentum, make sure you engage those scapula, and make sure you stay on your vertical line by not drawing the elbows back. Don't pull yourself up so high that the shoulders crank forward, because then you increase the risk of shoulder impingement. All right, let's move on to the next. Muscle building exercise number 4 that you are probably doing wrong is the deadlift. The deadlift is probably one of the most important exercises in terms of building overall muscle mass, and it's one of the most important exercises that we do right, in my opinion, because it can go south pretty quickly. I'm gonna demonstrate a really ugly one here for you, and if you're watching right now, pray for me, please. I don't want you guys to actually try this at home, and if you're making any of these mistakes, the whole point of this is to make sure that you fix these, okay? My God, that was ugly. Let's fix the shit out of this. Let's start with the setup. I'm gonna want the bar in pretty close to my shins because I know that's gonna be right around my center line. I wanna think about a fairly vertical shin here because much like my squat, I'm gonna want a fairly straight bar path when I do this. So if I'm already driving my knees forward, I'm not gonna be able to pull the bar straight, and I'm not gonna be able to have my back straight most likely. So I want vertical shins, bar over the center of my foot or towards my shins. My hands are gonna be out wide enough that my massive biceps, aren't pushing my knees inward. That's one of the mistakes I see when people's knees go inward too, is that a lot of times their hand spacing is too close and they're trying to work around where their arms are. So my hands are out just wide enough to make sure they're not interfering with my knees. Right before I start my pull, I'm gonna turn my lats on. So kind of like when we did the bench press, I'm gonna think about driving my shoulders towards my hips. Some people will use the cue to drive your shoulders down. That works if you're standing, but if you're horizontal, you're gonna do this. I wanna drive my shoulders this way. Once I do that, I'm gonna take a big deep breath and brace, and I'm gonna pull the bar straight up to a neutral position. Everything is in alignment. So my spine is in a natural curvature. I'm not excessively extending the hips. I'm not excessively arching my back. All I have to do is a return trip. I like to teach people to lead the return trip with the hips, not the shoulders. If I lead with the hips, the bar can go straight back down. Once I get past the knees, I just think about sitting down. If I lead with the shoulders, I'm gonna round the back. So lead with the hips, butt goes back stays nice and straight, boom, and we're set up perfectly for the next rep. Quick recap here. We wanna make sure in our start position, we have a nice neutral spine. So I'm gonna think chest up, butt out, nice straight back. I want my hands spaced wide enough that my biceps aren't pushing my knees in, and I don't have to work around my arms during the rep. Before I start my lift, I wanna make sure the bar is positioned over the center of my foot or right up against the shins or damn close. Because you're looking down at an angle, you will think that that is right over the center of your foot. And I get the cameraman to come over a little bit over this way and just have a look. You can see that that's nowhere near the center of my foot. That's gonna make my next rep unbelievably heavy. So the easiest way to do this, get the bar up against your shins. As you come down, it will push the bar forward a little bit. You'll be right over the center of your foot. Last thing is to turn my lats on before I start my pull and take a big deep breath. I'm gonna drive the shoulders down towards the hips. Big deep breath and brace like Mike Tyson's about to punch me in the stomach. And then I'm gonna drive all the way up to a nice neutral position. Push the hips back to get back into my start position for the next rep. Keep the bar on your center line, keep your back straight, turn on the lats, and make sure your massive biceps aren't gonna interfere with your knees during the lift. On to the next. Fifth muscle building exercise that you're probably doing wrong and how to fix it. So now we're gonna do the overhead press. Again, bear with me as I make this as ugly as possible and pray for me that I don't hurt myself as I do this here. So, it's pretty ugly, I think. If you were paying attention, you saw a lot of things wrong. For one, my lower back was hyperextended, so I had my butt sticking out like a cat in heat, and my chest heaved as though I was trying to lift my bosom towards the ceiling. Obviously, I was not lined up. So one of my rules for pretty much all my lifts is that I'm looking for optimal joint alignment. At the bottom position here, what I did was I started too low. So my elbows were behind my wrists, which means the bar wanted to go that way. As I pushed up, my elbows flared, one went ahead of the other. I didn't drive my head through the way it was right in front of me. I didn't get neutral spine, and I didn't look cool doing it. And that's probably one of the most important points. So let's fix this, let's clean this up. In my start position, I wanna make sure I have a neutral spine. So a neutral spine means that I'm gonna squeeze my butt cheeks and pull the top of my pelvis towards my rib cage. Essentially, I want my core engaged and I want my glutes engaged because they're gonna both work together to stabilize my midsection and to stabilize my press. If I don't have rigidity through here, I'm a wet noodle, and that's when it's more likely that I could pinch something on my lower back, hurt something in the knee, all of that fun stuff. So neutral spine. I'm still gonna lift the rib cage up, but I'm not gonna lift the rib cage up to the point where I'm arching the back. So I wanna think about extending through my mid back, lift the rib cage up just a little bit, but keep nice and tight through here. In the beginning of the press, my shoulder blades are gonna be down and back. I don't want my elbows behind the bar. If my elbows are way out behind the bar, then my force in the start of my press is gonna be forward. Usually if I see this with people, it's because they're starting in too low of a position. So again, they're getting in that kind of forward shoulder roll position here. So make sure the shoulder blades are pulled down and back. Keep the elbows in line with the wrist. When I do the press, after I get the bar past my head, I'm gonna drive my head forward. I wanna finish in the top position with my biceps in line with my ear, my elbows locked out, and I'm pushing the bar up towards the ceiling. Again, everything's nice and tight, no arching, lots of stability. Let's do this now. Again, I'll try to talk through it as much as I can while I'm going through. Hand spacing, I should mention too, can be critical. If I'm out too wide, it can be tough on the wrists and tough on the elbows. This is gonna be something that you'll probably have your own personal preference with. I used to go super wide, but I also used to do this really with my elbows flared. So ever since I started pushing my elbows in a little bit tighter, I like to go a little bit inside that. So from here, again, in my start position, my elbows are gonna be driven forward, so they're underneath the wrist. I'm not gonna have my back arched. I'm gonna neutralize the spine, brace the core, elevate the rib cage, drive the bar up, push my head through, and at the top of the position, there should be a nice straight line from the bar, basically down through my ears, all the way through to the center of my feet. On the way back down, elbows are gonna come forward. I'm gonna lower the bar, again, to about chin level. If I come much lower than that, the elbows are gonna dump forward and the bar is gonna wanna fall forward as well. Main thing here, guys, keep that spine neutral. The other thing is full range of motion. So don't come down too far, but make sure you're not stopping at nose height. Usually around chin or just below chin height. Not so low, you lose that position with the elbows. And at the top, make sure you lock the elbows out and you squeeze. Again, the muscle that stretches the most is the muscle that grows the most. And again, we wanna have optimal joint alignment throughout the entire movement. So that was exercise number 5. All right, guys, there you have it. 5 muscle building exercises that you're probably doing wrong and how to fix them. Make sure you're paying attention to all these pointers here. It's super important that if you want to use these exercises to build muscle that you do properly, because otherwise all you're going to do is potentially hurt yourself and an injured athlete can't get stronger. So if you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe. If you can think of any exercises that we missed or any pointers that I missed, please mention it in the comment section below. Outside of that, guys, we'll see you next time. Stay strong.